Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we're going to be talking about Brie Larson, who just does not know when to shut the hell up. She is possibly single-handedly going to lead to one of the most unimpressive, one of the most underwhelming performances of the box office that the MCU has ever seen. Now, note, at no point in what I just said did I say that this movie was going to lose money. At no point did I say that this movie is going to be a flop. I know that there are plenty of people who watch my videos, who leave comments, who think that the movie is going to be a flop and have a lot of reasons to say that. And I think that based on things like this, they have at least some leg to stand on. But I myself personally don't think the movie's going to lose money. I don't think it's going to be this giant juggernaut that they're trying to say that it's going to be, but I definitely do understand and recognize that there are certain factors in place. For example, the success of the MCU, the success of the previous film, Infinity War. However, there are a lot of things that we need to factor in. There are a lot of things that we need to look at. And so therefore, let's look at what Brie Larson has said recently, why she is essentially making this movie exceptionally and extremely toxic by her stupidity, by her blatant actual sexism in her comments, and also even racism on top of that, but also too, why it's this kind of nonsense that is turning so many people off. It's this kind of nonsense that is making my hounds so angry and so upset in the process as I try and get and grab their attention. It is because of this nonsense right here that so many people are speculating that maybe, just maybe, this film won't live up to the expectations that many have for it. So anyway, with a respected body of work, an Oscar, and now a prominent spot within the Marvel Cinematic Universe under her belt, Brie Larson is one of the biggest names in Hollywood right now. I would say she's one of the biggest names for one of the worst reasons, because guess what? People who are talking about her on YouTube, on Twitter, etc., most of it, I would say, or at least a large portion of it, is quite negative. So maybe being the most talked about person in Hollywood isn't the best thing out there. And now she wants to use her position to help make the industry a more diverse and inclusive space. Oh my gosh, why do you hate inclusivity? Why do you have a problem with diversity? I don't. I have a problem with people who lie, who try and act like there's a problem when there isn't a problem, who try and go after people just because of the color of their skin and because of their gender. That's what I have a problem with, and guess what? That's what Brie Larson does. That's what she's done constantly over and over again. But in a profile for InStyle with Marvel editor Sana Amanat, Larson spoke candidly about how, as different in a new project like Captain Marvel is for her career, she sees it as being a big part of her larger goal of using filmmaking to champion progressive, empowering messages to audiences. Let those words just set in for a second. She wants to push progressive and empowering messages. Well, that's what the editor is saying. Oh, okay. Well, let's see what she has to say. Carol didn't apologize for herself. I felt like that was a really valuable trait because she's incredibly flawed and makes a lot of mistakes and has to ask to atone for them. And that is super valuable. That is super valuable. That is super valuable. Man, you are such a great model for our young women, let me tell you. She's not ever shrinking herself down. The movie was the biggest and best opportunity I could have ever asked for. It was like my superpower. Right? She sounds like AOC here. Oh my god, like it's like, the economy is kind of like, super, and it's like my superpower. This could be my form of activism. Doing a film that can play all over the world and be in more places than I can be physically. This could be my form of activism. You want to know why we're so down on this film? You want to know why we're so critical of Brie Larson? You want to know why we're so critical of Captain Marvel before it's even come out? It's because of this nonsense. This is not the first time that Brie Larson has said something like this. This is not the first time that she's indicated the kind of SJW NPC that she actually is. And that is the reason why we are concerned. Because what happened in Star Wars? Oh, wait, that's right. Star Wars decided to go down the woke identity politics train, and also on top of that decided to go after its audiences. You have a person here who is not only going all woke, who's not only playing a character that is based off a woke history. People oftentimes forget that, saying, well, how can you judge the movie? Well, let me just put this out there. The movie is called Captain Marvel. Do you know anything about the Captain Marvel comics? I don't even read the damn thing, and yet I know more about it just by doing some research. And the Captain Marvel comics has been rooted and based in progressive SJW feminazi politics since almost its very inception. Ever since, back to the days of Miss Marvel, you do realize that her name was Miss Marvel because it was a part of the feminist movement at the time. You do realize also that the character as Captain Marvel was rebooted in 2012, has been rebooted 4 times since then, and also since that time has been a woke SJW. And yet that is the movie that they're now bringing to the big screen, and now you have in your lead star someone who fully embodies and accepts who this character is. She is telling us here very, very clearly that this person, Carol Danvers, fits into her activism. This is going to be her activism. This could be my form of activism, is being Captain Marvel. So if she's saying that Captain Marvel is activism, if she is saying that everything that she's been saying in public and in private, everything that she believes, and all the inherent racist and sexist white people out there that she hates so much, white men that she hates so much, then obviously at this point, why in the hell would most people want to go see this movie? Oh, because it's going to tie into Endgame. Trust me, you're going to be able to watch Endgame without having to see this film. You want to know why? Because you could have seen Infinity War and still enjoyed it. And guess what? People did. The reason why that movie made over $2 billion is not because you had a bunch of people who all saw all 20 other films and were going to see it. It was because you had a bunch of people coming back, and you had a bunch of new people for the first time who were saying, oh man, this is really cool. Now, Captain Marvel, it's going to be a bit of a different story, because guess what? When people do research on it, when people look up these things, they're going to say, wait a minute, why is she talking about progressive agendas? Why is she talking about activism? This is a superhero film. She's acting like this is the first time that a woman has ever been on screen, ever in the history of film. Newsflash, women have been in film for a very long time. Women have been the leads in films for a very long time. Women have been heroes in films for a very, very long time. This is not even close to the first major appearance by a woman in a film, and yet we are supposed to pretend like for some reason, somehow, some way in 2019, women are the most oppressed people on the face of the earth. You know, the most oppressed people of all time, more oppressed than any other race, more oppressed than anything else. Women, in general, are the most oppressed. We're supposed to buy into that lie. It's a lie. It's an absolute lie. Seriously, if you're a woman born in the United States, you are probably one of the most free and one of the most privileged peoples in the entire world. You want to know why? Not only are you born in the United States, which already has privilege attached to it, I love using your words against you, but also, too, you have more things offered for you than anything else in history. If you are just a woman, if you check off that box, you can get various scholarship opportunities. You can get so many things given to you, all because you were born a woman. So don't try and get off and you're like, oh man, it's so hard, it's so hard. Look, I'm not going to deny that there's some jackasses out there that are going to be mean to you, that are going to look down upon you because they're sexist. They exist, and they're always going to exist. That doesn't make it okay, but let's just be honest here. But if you're going to go try and say that I can't have an opinion on your movie or on anyone else's movie because I'm a white man, and that means I'm more privileged than you, shut the hell up. Seriously, take your activism and shove it down your throat. But speaking of that activism, let's dive into those numbers. How much is Captain Marvel going to make then? Oh, Odin, you're going off on all these things, and oh man, why do you always got to bring us down with all these facts? Because that's just what I do. That's my job. So let's talk about Captain Marvel for a second. Let's see. Oh my God, Captain Marvel is tracking. It indicates an incredible opening weekend. This is the most recent news from CBR.com. They are now saying that it could get up to $160 million in its opening weekend, making it one of the highest grossing MCU films of all time. Setting records. This is going to be a record-setting movie. One of the greatest openings ever. Not the greatest, but one of the greatest ever. It's going to be a huge thing. This is jumping up from 140 to 160. That's $20 million more in the tracking. Oh my God. Oh, if you didn't believe it, well, we actually had an article just not long ago, about a month ago, when we said Captain Marvel may outpace Infinity War in advanced ticket sales. Oh my God, it's going to be better than Infinity War. Notice how the narrative has changed there. They haven't talked about those advanced ticket sales in a long time. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's outpacing Infinity War. It's going to pass all these things. And oh, wait a minute, it's going to be one of the greatest. Don't worry, it's going to be one of the greatest. Look, it went from 140 to 160. Notice again, you went from Infinity War, again, one of the greatest domestic openings for an MCU film, to one of the greatest. And then you try and say, but you see, look, 140 to 160. Well, let's dive into those numbers even further. Let's look at the long range. This is all using proboxoffice.com. And what it's saying is that the range for the opening weekend, is between 140 and 180. Now, some people might be asking, okay, how are they getting these numbers? So basically, when it comes to box office tracking, what they do is they say, okay, let's see the ticket sales. Let's look at how many tickets the movie has sold so far. What is the rate in which tickets are being sold on a daily basis? And therefore, let us predict if the trends continue. If the percentages continue in the same exact way, we can then have an estimate about how much the film is going to end up making overall, while also saying that there's going to be people who don't pre-buy their tickets that are going to show up on the day. And so therefore, we can just put in a random quantifier to say, oh, that's what the number is going to be. So you see how this is a very, very unexact science that has been wrong. Usually it's pretty consistent because normally you don't really see much difference from day-to-day ticket buying. The reason why this is different, though, is because, remember, back in January, this was outpacing Infinity War. Now they've dropped that narrative, and now it's going to be like, oh my god, this is going to be an incredible record-breaking weekend, even though it's not going to be breaking the records of anything the MCU has done so far as far as opening weekends are concerned. So where are the records going to be then? Again, where are the records going to be? How is this long-term tracking actually going to pan out? Do we have examples of this not panning out? Oh, yes, we do. Just wait for that. But let's go to the top March opening weekend. So if this were to play out, if this movie were to make $160 million in its opening weekend, it would not even be the highest grossing film to come out in March. So therefore, you're left with this question. If this movie is not going to be the highest grossing film, like as far as opening weekends are concerned, in a month, where are these records going to come from? Because as I said, I promised you this. As soon as the movie comes out, one story and one narrative is going to be clear. This is a record-breaking movie. And yet, where's that going to happen? Is it going to be in the Thursday night premieres? I doubt it. I'm sure they'll try and spin the numbers some way. My guess is that if they're going to have to find anything, if they're going to have to try and say anything about it, they're going to say, well, March 8th weekend, it's the record of. Okay, that's great. Great job. You chose an arbitrary day and weekend to say it's a record of, just so that way you can say it's a record-breaking film. Guys, seriously, almost every movie it seems that comes out nowadays is a record-breaking film in some way or somehow. You know, it's ridiculous. It's so crazy. And so what movies can we look to understand, well, where might it actually fall? Well, Guardians of the Galaxy made $94.3 million in its opening weekend. Now, this makes a lot of sense because guess what? Not a lot of people were excited for it when it first came out because no one really knew anything about it. Everyone was very confused, like, oh, is this going to be good? Is this not going to be good? We really don't know. Sorry, I got to look and see because my dogs are eating something. Bad girl. Ugh, the hounds. Always keep me on my toes. But the Guardians of the Galaxy opened with $94.3 million, which makes a lot of sense. Because this was indeed a movie that came out with not a lot of real thought behind it. And really, people didn't know much about it, is what I mean. And yet, it got such great word of mouth that eventually it made a giant ton of money. What's the next one? Captain America Winter Soldier. Again, I don't think the first Captain America was as well received as this one ended up being, and so it makes a lot of sense, too, that this film would not be as high. First Iron Man, $102.1 million. The first of the MCU films did very well. Spider-Man Homecoming, very recent one, $117 million opening. I mean, are you saying it's going to do better than Spider-Man? Again, Spider-Man's been rebooted several times, so obviously an argument could be made there. Thor Ragnarok. I don't think anyone thought that the third Thor film was going to make $122.7 million, and yet it did in its opening weekend. So that's pretty good. Iron Man 2, 128. Guardians 2, because obviously everyone's like, oh, Guardians 1 was awesome. Let's see what happens next. 146.5. Iron Man 3, 174 million. Captain America Civil War, 179 million. And then we're getting to the last ones. Age of Ultron, which many consider to be one of the worst films. 191.1, or rather 191.3. Black Panther with 202 million opening weekend domestic. These are all domestic numbers. The first Avengers at 207.4. And Infinity War with 258.2. So if it comes in at 160, again, if it comes in at 160, this film will come in, let's see, if you adjust for inflation, so probably a little before Iron Man 2. But don't worry, guys, it's going to be one of the biggest ever. Yes, behind movies like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Iron Man 3, Civil War, Ultron, Black Panther, The First Avengers, and Infinity War. Oh, but it's still up there. Again, that's going to be the narrative. But what other narratives have we had in the past that have fit this nonsense? Oh, yeah, that's right. Solo Star Wars story. Does anyone remember this gem back from May 23rd, 2018, when it said Solo box office tracking suggests a record-breaking opening weekend? Keep in mind, May 23rd. This is very close. This is days before the movie opens, and it was tracking to break records. tracking to break records. Where have we heard this before? What were those numbers? The number range was 135 to 170 domestically alone. Overseas projected at 150 to 170. This film was supposed to make almost the entirety of what it made in the long run in one weekend. And yet, what did it actually make? Oh, wait, that's right. So again, 135 to 170, it made 103 in the 3-day weekend. So only 84 in the actual weekend totals. 3-day weekend, because there was a Memorial Day weekend, 103. So this film made $30, $40, $50 million less than what they projected to be. So again, those numbers, the long range tracking, 140 to $180 million, not really a whole lot to go off on. So what other movies can we look at? Oh, Black Panther did very well. Again, opening weekend did very well, $202 million domestically, but overseas, 169. Remember that film ended up making like $700 million in the domestic market, but only made around 400 when it came to the overseas market. But let's look at the weekends. Again, it was out for a lot of weekends. It was out for a very long period of time. Again, $242.15 million in its opening February, the 3-day weekend total. So if you include MLK. So once again, a film that did very well domestically, 242.1 versus a foreign total, which is more theaters, more people, only made 169.3. And yet this film, Captain Marvel, is supposed to be just like this. If you're going to tell me that this movie, because again, the tracking alone has it at 160. The tracking alone has it at 160. And yet this right here made 242.1 in the United States and 169 overseas. So let's just assume for a second that you're right. Well, then that would seem to indicate that, okay, 160 million, meaning that this probably will be smaller for Captain Marvel than anything else. And so what you're left with then is a movie that is not going to come anywhere near $1 billion. Again, just based on early projections, just using the numbers in front of me. Let's look at Star Wars. Great example. Remember how many weekends Black Panther was out? Like, look at that. 4 in total, did very well. Last Jedi, yeah. Only out for a very short period of time because it did not do well overseas. You want to know why? Because Star Wars got woke. Star Wars got woke and ended up going broke. Oh, it made $1.3 billion. Yes, it did, which is $700 million less than The Force Awakens, and also led to Solo: A Star Wars Story, which lost $200 million. Oh, but it'll be like Wonder Woman. It's gonna be just like Wonder Woman. Oh, okay, yeah. So opening weekend, $103.2 million. So Wonder Woman, which is arguably the best DCU film to date, some would argue Aquaman, made 103 in its opening weekend, 103 million in its opening weekend. This film did not have controversy around it. This film's star was awesome, was wonderful, thanked the fans, didn't go after anybody. And so therefore, not only did it make 103 million, but also it only had a 43.3% drop from week 1 to week 2, which is very, very small when you compare it to other movies. And so therefore, because of that, guess what? It had a longer stretch than other films from the DCEU and ended up making over $800 million, $412 million alone domestically. Also, foreign markets too. It made $125 million. So people were saying, how am I going to get that number? Well, again, if you're going to compare apples to oranges here, $169 million for Black Panther, Wonder Woman, female-led film, foreign market, $125 million. But again, no controversy, no wokeness, no Brie Larson coming out and attacking an entire group of people. $125 million. This bears to mind for me. This makes me think. So again, a territory is tracked. This bears to me that it's very likely, it's a very good and strong situation that this movie, that Captain Marvel, is not going to be this box office juggernaut that people think it is. Because when you have Brie Larson, who not only said that this is going to be her activism, but also made it very clear, saying that she does not care what white men have to say. Some people might forget this. Some people might forget this. She says, am I saying I hate white dudes? No, I'm not. But then follows it up with, I don't want to hear what a white man has to say about A Wrinkle in Time. I want to hear what a woman of color, a biracial woman, has to say about the film. I want to hear what teenagers think about the film. If you make a movie that is a love letter to women of color, there's a chance that a woman of color does not have to does not have access to review and critique your film. She said, while revealing plans to roll out an opt-in program that will provide studios with access to underrepresented journalists and critics. Do not say the talent is not there, because it is. So you say they don't have access, which is a lie, because guess what? If you have a camera, if you have a YouTube channel, boom, you have access. You have the ability to put your reviews out there. Whether they'll listen to or not, depends on if you're any good or not. But you have a woman that's saying this, going after white men. You have another point, she says, I'm being activist. And people are wondering why it is we're saying, wait a minute, how is Captain Marvel outpacing Infinity War, set for record-breaking, incredible opening weekends, $160 million, long range, $140 to $180 million, and yet, Solo Star Wars story, we got the same thing, and it was off by $30 to $40 million. And then we look to other films like Black Panther, which it's been compared to, and we see, wait a minute, this film didn't do as well overseas as it did in the United States because there was a market that came out in droves to go see Black Panther domestically that was not there in the foreign market. And you're telling me that this film, which ended up making $1.3 billion, only around $400 million or so in the foreign market, that this film, which made $242.1 million in its opening weekend, you're telling me that this film is being compared to, again, $160 million versus this, $169 million. Oh, wait a minute, but what about the women? What about the women? 103 in the foreign market, or rather in the domestic, and then foreign market, 125 million. Basically, what we're trying to get down to, and I know this is a long video, is that the numbers aren't adding up. For the people saying it's tracking at 160, I say, we got to wait till the opening weekend. We're not going to know how well the movie's going to do until we get the actual opening weekend numbers and also the week 2 drop. Here is what I predict is going to happen. The range is 140, or rather is what, 130 to 160 is last time I checked, 140 to 180. I would say this movie probably ends up around the 130 to 140 range, on the lower end of things. And then I would predict that you're going to see over a 50% drop from week 1 to week 2, which means that domestically, and this is all domestic numbers, which means that domestically this film is probably going to crap out just shy of $400 million. Now somebody might say, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that great? Yes, but here's the thing. How much money is it going to make overseas? Yeah, this film might end up making $500-600 million overseas. As I said, my max has it at 650. Hopefully now you can understand why I have this range of 450 to 650. Because if this film underperforms even more than I predict, if this film only makes $110 million in its opening weekend, remember, Wonder Woman domestically only made $103 in its opening weekend. If the film matches that and also has a much larger drop than Wonder Woman, and also does not do nearly as well, because keep this in mind, the foreign markets are a lot more aware of woke SJW politics, and she has made it very clear how she feels and has made it very clear that this is going to be her activism. I don't understand how anyone in their right mind at this point could say that this is going to break records, that this is going to be the most successful film of all time, other than the people who are protecting this film because there's a woman involved. Those are my thoughts. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. If you like this video, smash that like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. Again, I'm so sorry for the length of the video. I am not feeling well today, and I wanted this video to be much more than it was, but it needed to be said. These needed to be talked about, and I wanted these docs to be connected. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, and as always, God bless.